all gotten money from Israel and not, or from APAC. APAC represents the interests of Israel and the Zionists, right? This is not anti-Semitic at all, but actually, believe it or not, they're actually trying to pass a bill that will literally make even the criticism of Israel anti-Semitic, right? Anything you say that to criticize anything that they do, they want to say, "Oh, that's anti-Semitic," right? And so this is politics, right? So literally, they're sending all this money. I remember thinking, who asked for that? And they showed a black lady from Ohio, a senator or something, or maybe she's a congresswoman, I guess a congresswoman, and they said that she was very, very much pro-Israel. She received $1 million from APAC, and her opponent was anti-Israel. So they gave her a bunch of money so that she could win and get into office. And so they said literally 93 out of 100 senators in our Senate got money from APAC, which means that that's why they're pretty much never going to vote against anything involving sending money over to Israel. So what my point is on this is to say that from an economic consciousness standpoint, you got to understand the money is kind of behind everything in America, in American politics. One of the biggest mistakes in America made when it came to capitalism isn't always bad. Capitalism doesn't have to be terrible, but the biggest mistake they made with it's like integration. Like when I talk about integration, if you listen carefully, you'll know that it's nuanced. I don't say integration is bad. I say the way we did integration was bad. I say that the way it was executed was bad. So the same is true with the capitalism. Capitalism is like I don't know. It's almost like if you have if you have like some chemical in your house that's going to take the paint off your wall, like paint remover or whatever you call it. You don't mix the whatever they call that stuff. You don't mix the paint remover with your chicken salad because if you put it in your food, it's going to kill you. Do you understand what I mean? Right. So, but the paint remover itself is okay. It's good. You can get the paint off the wall. But if you put it in your chicken salad because you think it's salad dressing, you're going to die. Right. So that's kind of what capitalism. So the capitalism is okay to a point, right? Free enterprise businesses making money, get money, get money. Money's good. But the problem is that if you mix your capitalism with your politics, your country's going to die. And that's what America did. America, there was a big case called Citizens United that a lot of people really freaked out about, and they were like, "No, don't do this." Where they were going to start treating corporations like people, and also they have these campaign finance issues that are going on where you'll see where you'll have people like Nancy Pelosi, where they'll be like, "Well, my salary is only 200,000 a year, but I'm worth 200 million," right? Like how is somebody whose salary is only a couple $100,000 a year worth 50 $100 million? Well, it's because the money just seeps its way in, and when the money snakes its way in, it ends up shifting incentives, right? So that's your politics, right? So this is what financial consciousness training does. In case you're new, I want to make sure you guys understand why we get together, because I want you to be able to see the money. I want you to be able to see the money. And actually, ironically, so let's circle back to what I was saying earlier. I told you all I woke up today and I for some reason I just talk about stuff that's on my mind, and I saw this little beef. If you don't follow hip hop, I'll explain it to you. But basically, two rappers, Drake and Kendrick Lamar, are going back and forth. Now I have to keep up with the culture, right? I've been on the Breakfast Club a bunch of times, stuff like that. So I'm always made a conscious effort to see what all black people of all age levels are looking at and thinking about. So I know about a lot of stuff, all the way from love and hip hop, all the way to whatever, right? But also, I told you I've been a big fan of hip hop. I still remember me and Tupac, our birthdays are like a month apart. And actually, it's ironic because I became friends with Ice Cube, and our birthdays are really close. I think he's a little bit older than me, but our birthdays around the same time. I think we're both Geminis because he texted me on my birthday and he said Happy birthday, Gemini, or something like that. And then also, I used to be really close friends with Dame and Dash from Rockefeller, and our birthdays are really close. And Dame became almost like kind of like a big brother, but it was he kind of got on my nerves a little bit because he's kind of a bully type, and I don't respond well to bullies. You try to bully me, we gonna fight. So anyway, so that kind of creates, you get two traumatized black men in the same room, it just gets messy. Same thing happened with Kanye. It was just kind of like, bro, I can't do this. Like you don't be taught, you can't talk to me like that. I'm not no kid. But anyway, here's the deal. So let me tell you. So I follow this, right? I pay attention. I understand it. And some people think that because you're past a certain age that you don't understand, you don't get it. And I'm like, no, actually, I know the whole history of hip hop, and I've studied it very carefully because hip hop has been driving black culture for about 25 or 30 years. Hip hop is one of the things that the capitalists that wanted to control black people, it was one of the things that they hijacked in order to manipulate the minds of black people. They knew they said, okay, this music has a spell on black people, so we're going to poison the well. We're going to put the paint remover in the chicken salad, and we're going to kill the whole black community. We're going to kill them spiritually. We're going to kill them financially. We're going to kill them intellectually. We're going to kill them. We're going to even murder their ability to even reproduce in an appropriate fashion by simply poisoning the thing that they consume the most. That's what you do, right? You find out what they're. It's like how they killed the Indians with the smallpox. They said, okay, everybody needs a blanket. Here, we got blankets for everybody, and they put the smallpox in the blankets. Next thing you know, everybody's dead. So, to some extent, a big segment of the black community is spiritually, psychologically dead, mainly because they gave you blankets with smallpox in it. And some people just they cuddled up in their little blanket, right? So anyway, so this interesting beef is fascinating to me because my personal view is like I don't understand. I think about hip hop beefing differently from everyone else. I think because I can go back to when Tupac and Biggie both got killed, and when both of those guys died, over $1 billion was lost in each death. Each death led to the loss of over $1 billion in the black community because Tupac was $1 billion brand. He was becoming one. Biggie was becoming $1 billion brand. Death Row Records was probably going to be worth. If Death Row Records had been managed properly, if it had been managed by people that had a certain level of economic consciousness, who had an awareness of the power of what they actually had, other than just all the what's the word I'm looking for? The clout. There were people who were caught up in the clout of being part of death row, but they didn't understand the economic potential of death row. If they'd had someone there that had economic consciousness, or maybe a mentor who, some OG who just said, okay, y'all got to settle this down. You don't understand what you have here. Death Row Records could have been properly managed and become probably maybe a 50 to $100 billion company. I really believe that, right? Just continue down the same trajectory they were on. 30 years of nonstop hits. Next thing you know, you got something massive, and then you take brand expansion. You take that death row brand, and you start putting out all kinds of other. Even though the term death row is kind of sad, kind of right there. That's spiritually questionable, right? That you're sort of spreading death, right? But anyway, put that to the side. It could have been pretty amazing. So anyway, so with the beast, I think it's really fascinating that first of all, I think it's just really interesting that in hip hop or black people, we're kind of the only group I can think of where somebody has died because they made a song. Right? And it hasn't happened just once; it's happened many, many times. The rapper Jay Ortiz, who's hosting the Get Money Fest in Philadelphia on May 18th, which I'm going to be there, by the way. I'll share the link with you guys. One of his really good friends was a rapper in California. I don't remember his name. I wish his name was in my head. It's out of my head, but he got killed in a Denny's. Y'all can help me remember who this is. But literally, he was in a Denny's, and I think his girlfriend texted out his location, and he got killed. And some guy literally showed up at the Denny's and shot him in the Denny's in front of everybody. If you know who I'm talking about, say his name, so I can give proper respect. But Jay was really close to him, and Jay PNB Rock, thank you. And Jay and PNB Rock were like this. They were performing together, and I remember having conversations with Jay and kind of saying, "Are you sure you want to even go into this space?" Because hip hop is an interesting place where there are these economic opportunities, but to some extent, it is a very dangerous, dangerous profession, especially if the frequency of the music that you're putting out is at a certain level. It's going to draw certain energy, right? It's going to draw, if you're rapping about killers, gangsters, and thugs, then guess who's going to show up at your concert? It's going to be killers, gangsters, and thugs, right? And then a bunch of white people who love to see black people act like killers, gangsters, and thugs, right? That's what you kind of draw. So I said, are you sure this is really what you want to do? Because sometimes the white man feeds us these fantasies about fame and fortune. He makes us have the wrong dream sometimes. Sometimes the thing that you're dreaming about, the thing that you want the most, is the thing that you will want the least. And I said, your friend, he was achieving his greatest dreams and goals, but now he's not here anymore. Tupac achieved the highest of heights, and now he's gone. And I don't know if he would have traded his life for whatever short term 2 years of extraordinary fame that he had. So with this whole interesting thing with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, it's fascinating to me because it is economic. It's always economic. Both of these guys have these multi-million, maybe billion-dollar brands. Drake's been famous for a really long time. Kendrick's been famous for a while too. And for whatever reason, they're fighting. They're going back and forth. On one hand, hip hop beef does draw attention and it can rejuvenate your career. On the other hand, though, you're dividing, you're splitting the audience. So sometimes all that fighting back and forth can become overly destructive. Like if I destroy you and you destroy me, then we're just two destroyed people that are both looking really, really bad. But then also there are people that benefit from hip hop beefs. If you remember in the Tupac beef, how many of y'all remember when Tupac was going back and forth where he said, you know, my fofo, make sure all your kids don't grow and you know, all this other, you know, stuff that he was saying. Does anybody remember that? Is anybody old enough? Give me a guess if you're old enough where you were an adult or maybe a teenager at that time. And I was exactly the same age as Tupac, so I watched it very, very closely. He was one of my favorite artists, and I remember at that time, uh, the artists that I know who were kind of around in that era literally said we knew someone was going to get killed. Like it was getting beyond the just words; it was getting very, very serious. And the West Coast is heavily gang affiliated. It was back then. I think it still is, you know, and I just think about that in terms of just if I'm beefing with someone like a Kendrick Lamar, I'm thinking, oh wait, you're from the West Coast. West Coast people tend to, not all of them. I'm not stereotyping. I should not do that. I'm not going to do that. But there's more of a group mentality, right? If we're on the same group, on the same team, we're going to kind of operate in the same way. We're going to take on each other's situations to some extent, right? If I'm really representing this other person and they're in a beef with you, then that's my beef too. And I remember learning more about that when, believe it or not, MC Hammer was getting dissed by some white rapper on the East Coast. It was a long, long time ago. I forgot the guy's name. I think third base or something. There were these white guys that could rap really good, and he made a little diss. I think he had a song about Hammer or the Hammer Time or yeah, the Gas Face or something. It was something like that, right? And the guy came out to the West Coast, and they were going to literally like take him out. He was literally going to get, you know, dealt with. And I think about these things, right? Just as a black man, and just really process number one within hip hop, the death culture. I don't think Drake and Kendrick could ever get to that point, even though anything's possible. Anything is possible. In the west On the West Coast, the West Coast is interesting because anybody can be touched in the West Coast. It just, you know, don't ever. There's no amount of celebrity that can really protect you. You know, it's a beautiful, wonderful, interesting, and amazing place. You know, and I've just seen things. I'll just say that I've seen things. But also, when you talk about this from a financial standpoint, I find it interesting when you have media mostly owned by white people that sort of perpetuate these beefs among black men, which can sometimes end up very dangerous, right? And it can end up destroying not just tremendous brand value, but actually ending somebody's life. And the thing about the Tupac Shakur beef that really bothers me is that the white media was really egging it on. They really loved it. They wanted to see more. And then you know, these guys got somebody. I don't know if everybody did, but he got, you know, caught up in all the drama of it all and the hype of it all. And then also you throw in trauma because Tupac had been shot several times. He felt like somebody set him up. So he's probably feeling very paranoid. So that trauma leads to this trauma response, which ultimately leads to his death and then the death of Biggie. And then what tends to happen sometimes is that the more conscious person is the one who can see where it's all going, right? Remember, I told you about consciousness. Consciousness is when you elevate. When you elevate above something, you can see what's below you, behind you, and in front of you, and to the side of you. A person who's in it can't see it. If you're in the forest, you can only see the trees in front of you. But if you're above the forest, you see the size of the forest, you see the direction, you can see miles ahead. And so there was another third character in all this beefing back and forth called J. Cole. I think J. Cole is a very conscious person. He's known as a conscious artist. And the first thing he did when the Kendrick Lamar thing happened was he apologized. He said, I apologize. Kendrick's a great artist. I think he's a great guy. I love him. He's extraordinary, blah, blah, blah. And so those who were not conscious in the culture got mad. They said, "Well, that's not right. You're supposed to beef. You're supposed to fight back." And but those who are more conscious, like my friend D1, who's friends with J. Cole, I've never met J. Cole, but I know D very well. I know D knows J. Cole. They were sort of applauding it. They were like, "This is great. This is good," because you see where this can get ugly, and you're literally just saying, "Look, I don't want to fight with you, right? I want to rise above the fight." And this is an important point on consciousness, and this actually goes back to economics. I promise you, it does. Anybody remember the movie Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington? How many of y'all remember the movie? Give me a yes if you remember the movie Crimson Tide, where Denzel Washington played a soldier who was on a nuclear submarine, and he had this boss. Gene Hackman played his commanding officer, and Denzel's on this sub, and he's sitting there, and they're talking about war, and Denzel says, "Well, you know, sir, um." in a war, the enemy isn't actually the person you're fighting. And the guy looks at him and he's like, okay, all right, college boy. Okay, so he says, so let me get everybody's attention. Mr. Wilson is going, whatever his name was, he's going to explain to us who the true enemy is in a war. And he said, well, sir, actually the enemy in war is war itself. And the thing is that was a deep comment. Some people won't get it. Some people will. Conscious people will get that. Conscious people understand, and J. Cole understood this. And actually, believe it or not, I think back in the Tupac situation, Snoop understood it, and Biggie understood it. They understood that the bigger question is not can I defeat you? The bigger question is should we be fighting in the first place? You're my brother, man. Like you're black like me. Like why are we enemies when we should be allies? I don't understand what happened here. How do we end up seeking to destroy each other? And this is a consciousness question you should ask yourself every time you get in a fight with your friend, your wife, your sibling, or anybody that should be your natural ally. You should really stop for a minute and say, wait a minute, this ain't, like that Willow Smith song, wait a minute, right? You really should say, wait a minute, like, wait, what's going on here? I think I left my consciousness on your doorstep, right? I think my consciousness is gone. And what I say what's happening is I'm operating on an animal frequency. And the reason I mentioned Snoop Dogg is because Tupac was really furious with Snoop Dogg when he died, from what I understand. Again, I'm not an expert on all the Tupac lore. I don't worship celebrities in that way, but I did follow it. So if I say something wrong, just chalk it up to the fact that you may understand it better than I did. But I remember Snoop specifically saying that Tupac was really angry at him. Why was he angry at him? Well, because Snoop Dogg had gone to the East Coast and they asked him about the beef, and Snoop said, I'm cool with everybody. I want to be friends with everybody. I don't want to. And Tupac, who was in a warrior's mindset, said, if you are trying to be friends with my enemy, then you can't be a friend of mine. That's kind of how things were when he died. And I want you to pay attention to the outcome, though. Who survived and who didn't? Who's still here and who's not here. Right? This is something that a lot of people don't process this, but I think that consciousness played a big part in this. There were people who saw where things were going. There were people who said, this is bad. This is not the way things are supposed to be. This is not what hip hop was created for. We're all black men. Why is my greatest enemy on earth another black man? I think that's a question that none of us we don't really ask that a lot. If you look at another black person, you say that is my mortal enemy. I hate that person more than I hate any white person ever who's ever lived. I hate them more than any person who's ever tried to harm me. I hate them more than North Korea. I hate them more than anybody on this earth. I think that's really deep. I think that's really, really deep. How did you get to the point where a person who should be your natural ally is not just your enemy? I get it if someone just isn't your type and someone that you want to avoid or you don't want to necessarily connect to, do business with, or build with. But when that person becomes something where you're spending all of your energy to seek and destroy that person, I think that you may want to sit back and take a step back and ask yourself, should this really be my top priority? Is this really where my mind should be? So anyway, so this goes deeper into the nature of these beasts. Now I know I started talking about the whole Kendrick Lamar and Drake thing, which it's interesting to watch, right? And it's a lot of it's financial, right? Kendrick is going to benefit financially because his profile's kind of rising back up, and because he's kind of, I feel like he's kind of beating Drake up a little bit, to be honest with you. But Drake was never really my style. He's more like an actor. He's like a Degrassi kid, whereas Kendrick is more to me in the spirit of the Tupacs, and he's West Coast, right? He kind of represents the West Coast, and I think he's great at that. But still, though, I think at the end of the day, anytime you're ever beefing with somebody, I think you got to ask yourself, is this person better as my enemy, or is there a possibility they could be my friend? And what's really fascinating about war, which is very financially destructive, war is very, very bad for business. War is very bad for business. Typically, not all the time, but typically it's very, very bad. The mafia understands that. The first thing the mafia does whenever a war breaks out, what do they do when a war breaks out? They have a sit down. They say, no, let's sit down and talk. We need to talk. We need to communicate, because they know that communication is the lubricant that can kind of help you to smooth things over when there's friction, because a lot of wars typically break out over misunderstandings, somebody's feelings are hurt, right, or whatever, right? And so what if you go back, circle back to J. Cole's response, which made people call him a wimp and a punk because a lot of people don't operate on the level of consciousness that he has. His response was, you know what? It sounds to me like you're lashing out at me. This is what people that have been through therapy can see. This is how they process things. He's probably thinking, gosh, okay, he's mad because his feelings are hurt. That's why he's lashing out. So in order to make things right, I'm going to apologize so that we can repair. And I would encourage you to consider that, especially if somebody that you care about goes at you and really attacks you. Try not to just feel the need to fight back. Instead, take a step back. Instead of fighting back, take a step back. And maybe you can say, gosh, I bet you the reason you're attacking me is because I hurt you. And then humble yourself. This is why hip hop is not good for collaboration. This is why you rarely see rappers and stuff getting together to like build a hospital or build, a corporate. Think about it. Rappers could have built some corporation that's employing like 100,000 black people by now. We've had 50 years of hip hop and they've built absolutely nothing for the black community. They just got these dumbass hip hop museums at white Ivy League universities, right? At Harvard, we now have a hip hop class and a hip hop museum that has all the artifacts from it. That's all. White people benefit from this stuff, right? But there's nothing that gets built for the black community from this. Well, why not? Well, why not? Well, because it's about consciousness and culture. It's all about building this narcissistic desire to destroy everyone so that you can become king of the hill and tell everyone how you're better than everybody else. The energy is not collaborative at all. There's nothing humble about hip hop. In fact, there are people who literally think that if you're humble, you're a sucker. I saw somebody say that. I saw somebody literally put up a post and they thought they were being wise and they said whoever told you to be humble? You shouldn't be humble. Humble's for suckers. Like you should be proud and you should boast and you should brag and all this. And I'm like, what's wrong with being humble? Since when did humble become a bad thing? Don't you understand that some of the most confident people on the earth are the ones who are humble because they know they don't have to brag in your face every moment to show you who they are. I don't need to, I know what I can do. I know what I'm very proud of what it means to be Dr. Boyce Watkins. Dr. Boyce Watkins is a bad dude. He's a fighter. He's a winner. He don't give up. He's super smart. He's well trained. He's on top of his stuff, but I'm not going to be in your face reminding you of how I'm better than you. Right? Being humble is okay. I believe the most confident people in the world are the ones who are humble because they want to make space for you to grow too. My tree can grow without blocking the sunlight from your tree. Do you understand? Like I can still grow, I can still be great, and then make room for you to be great also. Especially if I'm the one who's ahead of you, if I'm the OG and I'm the one who's accomplished, and you say, "Gosh, I look up to you. You're so great." If I come over and I'm like, "Well, you ain't nothing because I'm the greatest and I'm the best, and you ain't, and I'm better than you," well, then I'm not making room for your tree to grow. I kind of feel like that's not right, Or if I see somebody else who's grown their tree and they've accomplished something, can't there be room for everybody? And again, this is a consciousness vibrational frequency sort of concept because people that operate on that low vibrational frequency, they feel like everything's a competition. Well, why? Well, because they're operating in a scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset means that the only way I can win is if you lose. That's it. And the only way you can win is if I lose. So you winning is a threat to me. You winning takes something away from me. You having something good in your life means that I have less good in my life because I'm supposed to have what you got. And I just really encourage you, if you feel that way, again, everybody goes through it though. Everybody goes through it. Jealousy is so natural. Jealousy is I spent my early 30s trying to conquer jealousy because I did not like it. I said there's nothing beneficial about this. Like I don't think there's anything good about going through life and just being mad at what somebody else has. And I was thinking about it mostly from like a romantic standpoint. I didn't understand. I said, why am I so, if I love this woman, why am I so jealous? Jealousy does not make me a more attractive man. Jealousy only makes me insecure. It makes me look weak. It makes me look unattractive. Who would want to be around somebody who's jealous all the time? So I spent time learning how to manage jealousy, learning how to process it properly. I'm not saying it's all gone. We're all human, right? It's all there. It's a journey, right? God is not through with me yet, But really, when I'm in my right mind, when I'm really walking the walk that I really want to walk, I try to walk a walk that's not a jealous walk. But I get it. Everybody feels it. But I can tell you that jealousy is built on a scarcity mindset. That person's success ain't got nothing to do with yours. They can win and you can win too. So cheering them on is not going to in any way have any impact on the success that you have. What has an impact on the success that you have is whether or not you're putting in the work or doing whatever you got to do to get access to whatever you would like to have. Okay. So ultimately I think that just taking the circling this back to financial consciousness, I would encourage you to really process all these emotions and all these feelings that you have. We've talked extensively about things like financial anxiety and stuff like that, but I really think that processing how collaborative you are and how you respond to other human beings is a really important part of your economic journey as well. People that are just good people, they go out of their way to be helpful to others or see the success of others as their own success. They tend to be more collaborative. They tend to have more people willing to partner with them. They have people that want to be around them, that want to work with them. And so I think trying to be that person, I think really goes a long way to your economic success, right? It all circles back. The world is reciprocal. The world is a boomerang. So the karma is extremely real. So what you're putting into the universe really does come back to you. So process what you're putting out there. And to give you sort of an extreme example or counter example of that, I remember when Tupac got killed, and I remember one of my friends said something that was awfully blunt, but it was true. She said, "Well, if all you do is rap about flowers, eventually somebody's going to bring you some roses." That's what she said. I remember she said that because we remember for us it was very real. It had just happened like that week, and she said, "Yeah, if all you're doing is rapping about flowers, then somebody's going to eventually bring you some roses." So she was saying that, look, if you're putting out this certain kind of music, my fofo will make sure all your kids don't grow. Well, you ain't the only one who's got a fofo, right? You're not the only one. They're not the only one who's got kids. Maybe your kids won't grow either. Um, and in fact, I remember, and I'm gonna finish this. This will officially end my talk about hip hop. But I think hip hop is so important for Black culture. That's why I bring it up, especially when you talk about economics. But I remember Snoop explain he claimed that he had this conversation with Tupac, where he said Tupac's feeling was, we're the guys, we're the center of everything. We're the center of the universe, and we're the gangsters that everybody fears. That's what Tupac's feeling was, right? And Snoop said he said, I don't know if I can imitate Snoop, but he said, he said, I told him, I said, cuz they make gangsters everywhere. They make us everywhere. He did that West Coast accent, and basically he was saying that you're not the only one. Like you really think that you are different, but no, everybody. The same energy that you have to destroy and to harm and to attack and to fight, there are people everywhere that have that. And if you center yourself in that energy, in that space, then you're going to be fighting all the time, right? So I think that in general, if you find yourself constantly fighting with yourself and fighting with others, then you probably want to do that internal work to ask yourself, how do I elevate above the fight? The best way to win a fight is not to win a fight. The best way to win a fight is to rise above the fight. And I think J. Cole, for example, reflected a type of maturity that I can appreciate because he said, I'm elevating above the fight. I'm getting out of I don't even want to be in it because I think that we can all be great. We can all be successful without us just going back and forth. But then what you'll see is you'll see different energy in other spaces where it's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like on Club Shay Shay, it's just, I'm gonna come on here so I can attack everybody within a 100-mile radius. And smarter people, like I think Dave Chappelle said, why would we all fight each other? We're all in this together. We're all Black comedians trying to survive. We're all trying to get our audience, and you're dividing our audiences. Now people don't feel like I can be a fan of Cat Williams and be a fan of Steve Harvey. I gotta choose because people are taking cues from this kind of behavior. And I agreed with Dave. I did, but maybe some people don't agree. I mean, fighting is very entertaining. It's very entertaining. That's the thing about it. And white people love to see Black people fight. They really do. I think that they like to put us on TV and just let us go at it. If I remember Jerry Springer, that's all Jerry Springer did was he would just get like traumatized people on his show and get them to like just get triggered and beat each other up. And that's how he probably made, $500 million doing that. Right. So there are people that live in the cage, and then there are people who build the cage, who manage the cage, who are standing on the outside of the cage and making sure that they're stirring up shit inside the cage. And I think that with our community, that's what it is. You have people in the cage that are fighting, but nobody asks themselves, nobody becomes conscious enough to go to that fourth dimension to say, who's managing the cage? Who built the cage? Who made we're all trying to kill each other in the projects. Well, who built these projects? Who designed things in such a way that we're all locked in this cage and we're fighting each other? That's consciousness, in case you don't know. That's what consciousness looks like. Consciousness is where you could take yourself outside of your body, outside of your situation, and look at the whole big picture. Again, just like when I was telling you about that airplane, when I took flight lessons and I was able to fly above the traffic, I saw things I could not normally see. I did not know. I remember flying to the University of Kentucky. My flight instructor and I, we went to University of Kentucky where I went to college. I've driven down that road to campus 1,000 times. It's 70 miles from my parents' house. I would drive back and forth to campus, and I thought I knew that route because I've driven it so many times. I could tell you everything by heart. When I flew that route in an airplane, it was like seeing a whole new universe. I saw big canyons I didn't know existed. I saw hundreds of acres or thousands of acres of farmland. I saw forests I didn't know were even there. I saw so much stuff. I didn't even see the route that I normally saw, which was the freeway, which was like this little line, this little thing that snaked its way up to Lexington, Kentucky. I didn't even see the freeway. I didn't know where the freeway was, but I saw this whole other reality because my consciousness had elevated to the third dimension. Instead of just doing length and width, I now had access to height. You understand? So every time you raise your consciousness and you go to another dimension, you see things that you did not see before, and that's really valuable. When people talk about playing checkers versus playing chess, that's what they're talking about. Chess players operate in the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension. Chess players are thinking six, seven, eight, nine moves down the line. Checker players are just thinking about the next move. So always practice playing chess. Don't play checkers because white man's playing chess on you, and they got us playing checkers. They got us playing tiddlywinks, tic tac toe, children's games. I ain't trying to be no child because this is serious. The consequences are huge. All right. So anyway, one thing I want to mention, by the way, if you make sure you're on the text list, if you want to get invitations to Money in the Morning, text the word morning to 87948, MORNING, text morning to 87948. And I want to share something with you guys in case you guys want to take a look at it. I put together a training called The Rules of Economic Self-Defense. And basically, I believe that economics is a form of it not only is a path, if it's used poorly, it's a pathway to slavery and servitude. But if it's used properly, it can allow you to defend yourself and perhaps even conquer territory. And so I literally broke down economics as in terms of rules of self-defense, in terms of how you can protect yourself, protect your family financially, short term and long term. So there's a 70% discount here if you guys want to take a look at that. I'm going to put the link into the chat, and I'll also text it out to you a little bit later on today. So feel free to take a look at that training. A lot of people like it, and it was something I did a couple years ago, and all of it's yours. It's yours for life. You can share it with your whole family. I think the price is about $59 or something, so it doesn't cost that much. And I guarantee you, though, it'll make a big difference. And of course, in the Black Business School, if you're not happy with something, let us know. Email support@theblackbusinessschool.com, and we'll give you a full refund. But feel free to take a look at that. And basically, I lay out some rules of economic self-defense, how Black wealth actually works, options in terms of how that works, saving your money, things like that. Just all the different ways that we are vulnerable economically. What happens is that in a capitalist society, money is used as a form of power. Money is used as a weapon and a tool to control and manage other people. The United States does this all over the world. They certainly do it right here in their own country. And so if you look at the lives of most Black people, they don't feel like they're in control of their lives. We tend to unfortunately, we've embraced a culture that is a victim culture, and it's a very reactive culture. It's not very proactive, meaning the energy to prepare is not as strong as the energy to repair or respond. And then also, it tends to be a culture where we tend to see ourselves as sort of being slapped around, like we're just these little puppets being slapped around by white folks that pretty much tell us what to do. Like we're used to having that white boss. We're used to having white people kind of running society and kind of controlling our lives. And I don't think think it has to be that way. In fact, I believe strongly that every black child that comes from an intelligent black family should be put in a position where they don't have to work for anybody if they don't want to. It's very, very easy to do. It's very, very straightforward. In fact, I'm going to pull up a slide and show you just sort of what the numbers look like on the $5 a day plan that we've talked about. It's very easy. So anyway, the economics of self-defense is kind of built around that because if you think about it like this, right? What does it look like to be financially vulnerable? And why is this so common? Well, financial vulnerability might look like this. Let's say you are a single parent who has one income, no savings, no investments, no multiple streams of income, no options, no skill set that will allow you to go and create a business or create wealth because you never learned about it, right? And so I want you to think about how this isn't just something that happens to poor people. It's not just poor people that get stuck in that rut. I literally know people that have PhDs that are stuck in that rut. I think about this process. I want you to think about how crazy this is. I really was meditating on this, and I said, how in the hell has anybody ever seen these stories about how you have PhDs that are like on welfare and stuff? Has anybody ever seen those? I'm like, how in the hell you got a PhD and you on welfare? I'm not making fun of you if you're in that category. I'm just trying to figure that out. Like, what happened? Who did that to you? How in the hell are you one of the smartest people on the planet? If you got a real PhD, I'm not talking about people that got their PhDs on the weekends or in some little summer program because you got a lot of fake PhDs out here. I notice everybody be calling themselves doctor and stuff like that. No, I got my PhD from the Ohio State University and it was pure hell. Several years of pure hell, studying 8, 9 hours a day, 5 years straight. No, did nothing else. Couldn't even date. I couldn't even go on dates. I met a nice, pretty black lady on the bus, and she was interested in me. I was interested in her, and it didn't. It just fell apart because I had to study so much. If you're listening, I apologize, ma'am, but I had to get my degree. But anyway, so I just don't understand how you are so well trained and you are so hardworking and you are so smart and you are literally at genius level. You literally have credentials that only less than 1% of the population have, and you can't figure out how to pay the bills. I'm not making fun of you. I promise you, I'm not. I'm trying to just make you ask yourself a basic question. How did that happen? Who did that to you? That's a massive deficiency. That just, I don't know. It's almost I don't it's I don't it's almost like when Superman couldn't walk anymore. Like one bad thing happened, and then next thing you know, Superman was in a wheelchair, and that was just weird because we're like, wait, but you're Superman. How did this happen? How does Superman end up in a wheelchair? And because I know PhDs, I mean, people make fun of them because they are kind of one dimensional, unfortunately, and they can't always do as much as as we would like for them to be able to do. But they're very smart. It takes a lot of focus and a lot of work to do that. And I'm just trying to understand why you can't pay the rent. And I would argue that part of the reason that this happens is because you didn't get some of those basic skills on economic self-defense. Like your daddy or your mother did not make sure that you understood, like, okay, in addition to getting that college degree, make sure you know how to start a business and make sure you're good at it. Make sure you got some investments. We're going to invest for you. Make sure you understand how to buy real estate. Make sure you understand multiple streams of income. Make sure you understand the importance of saving your money. Make sure you know that you don't want to keep up with the Joneses and spend all your money because if something bad happens, you want to be ready for that. And there's so many people that are just vulnerable. And so rather than me sounding like a weirdo because sounding so surprised by this, because to me it's very surprising because to me it's so straightforward. But then I have to remind myself that as a person who's been studying this for 30 years, I'm going to see things a little bit differently. And I acknowledge that. But I really want you to really process that for a minute. And I need you to understand that it doesn't make a lot of sense. The only way this can happen, in my opinion, on such a mass scale is if it's done by design. That's my point. The only way you could have 150 million people who are that financially vulnerable is if there were systems in place to just make sure that they stayed that way. Because if they simply just added a basic financial literacy curriculum to every public school, that would really change a lot. If they taught you how to make sure little things like if you pay your credit card balance off every month, you're going to save X amount of dollars in interest. Or let's spend a year really learning how to start a business and think like an entrepreneur. That becomes disruptive because, for example, you saw during the pandemic when you just had a year where everybody sat at home thinking about their life and reflecting on all the time they were wasting spending all their hours at the office. What happened? Well, your labor supply dropped because everybody was like, "Wait a minute!" It was like snapping them out of the trance. They were snapped out of their brainwashing. Suddenly, the consciousness of the country went up a little bit. That's what happened. People became they jumped out of their robot state because before the pandemic, it was get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. Get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. Get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. And me, I'm sitting here like the weirdo. I'm sitting there. Even my wife was one of those get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. Get up, go to work, come home, go to bed. And I'm looking like the weirdo hippie because I'm working down in the basement. Right? We just got married, or we just started dating, then we got married, and the kids are like, "Who's this guy that you like that like sits down and works in the basement all day?" So I had to eventually get to know the kids. But it was like, but I remember saying, I said, "Why would anybody want to spend all their time at work anyway? I don't understand why people don't listen to me when I tell you how much of your life you're missing when you're in that stupid little crazy rut." I'm not making fun of anybody, but I was saying these things in 2010. I was like, why would I want to get up and go to work every day when there's so many thousands of hours of life that I'm missing because I'm dedicating all my time to going to this office or going to this factory or working this job? That does not make sense. And so what happened during the pandemic was that it was almost like one of those times where your life gets disrupted, and then you sit back and in the middle of the shock of the disruption, you take a moment and reflect. Like, has anybody ever seen somebody who like runs the streets and they're like a complete knucklehead, and then they go to jail for like a year, and so for 1 year they're not able to do anything except sit in the cell and think about their life. And if they use that time properly, they come out and they sound like the Dalai Lama. They sound like super wise, like they've joined the Nation of Islam and or whatever, and they're suddenly like reading all these books and they suddenly see the world completely differently. I think that's what happens. Like that's why I think it's good for kids, for example, to get time out. Why did they give you time out? Well, they give you time out so you can sit back and think about what you did and think about what you're doing. Think about your life. And then when you get out of timeout, the child is a little bit more reflective, typically, except for some kids. But you get the point. So sometimes you need a timeout from your life. I think everybody should get blessed with a timeout. Timeouts almost always lead to higher consciousness. Even a timeout. Have you ever had like a timeout from a relationship with a really terrible person? Maybe they dumped you and you had to sit there and be sad that they were gone. And during that time, you realize that you could do better anyway. And then by the time they circle back around and realize that they liked you, you're like, sorry, I've moved on because I realized that you're a piece of shit. Hey, the timeout. Give yourself the timeout. In any part of your life, I guarantee you that if you give yourself a timeout, your consciousness will rise because you're going to have time to reflect. So this abusive relationship between you and corporate America is one where sometimes you need a little bit of a timeout. And I feel like the timeout that occurred during the pandemic, in the middle of all the shock and the sadness and the pain that people went through, where they were losing their jobs and everything else, and my heart goes out to them. You saw an awakening where suddenly people were like, I don't think I want to go back to work. I don't want to continue this relationship in the form that it was before 2020. And I think that was the universe telling you that you have a higher purpose, but you got to climb up to grab it. You have a higher purpose. Your purpose, you have a higher purpose, but you're gonna have to climb up to grab it. It's at the top of the tree. You're gonna have to meditate. You're gonna have to sit down, sit your ass down, get away from everybody, get away from your goofy friends, get away from your spouse, get away from those crazy kids, get away from that job, get away from whatever rut you're in, and just sit and process, who am I? Where am I here? What is this for? What makes me happy? How does this work? And I guarantee if you spend time doing that every day, you're gonna climb up to a mountain, and what's gonna happen, unfortunately, is that you're gonna be a little weird like me. Like I'm weird. I don't relate to a lot of people. A lot of people don't get me. A lot of people get mad at me because I'll say stuff. I'll be like, that's stupid. But honestly, it's because I've meditated on how stupid it is, and I've been thinking about it for 20 years. I'm like, that's dumb. Why do we all do that? And me, I'm dumb. I'll say it on Twitter, and I'll get attacked from all these people and I'll be like, I get it. I understand. You're in a different place. You're maybe you are where I was 25 years ago. I get it, right? But I'm telling you, I believe that when you kind of climb to that higher frequency that you're supposed to be on, there's a lot of peace there. It's like when I got in the airplane and I flew and I took off on the runway. I did it all by myself. I took the plane off on the runway. We went up in the air. We went up to 5,000 feet. There was no traffic. It was beautiful. I got to see the sunrise from a perspective I'd never seen before, and I wasn't worried about the traffic anymore because I was operating in a different place. I was operating in a place where I felt like I belonged, right? So I would encourage you. I think spiritually and psychologically, that place does exist for you, and I think that it will translate into a lot of things in your life, particularly your economic outcomes. I believe that when you are financially conscious and financially aware, and you understand what's going on, you understand your purpose, you understand what's for you and what's not for you, you're able to not to achieve your economic success, but do it in a way that feels very comfortable for you. Do it in a way that says, I understand how money is not the finish line. Money is a tool that will enhance my life in all the areas that money cannot buy. And I think that's what we want for our kids, right? I want our kids, I need our kids to have a couple things. I need them to at least number one, have some assets. I need them to have assets that their parents set up for them where they were investing for them when they were young. Because this whole idea of leaving our kids assed out, so hoping that the white man will take care of them, is absolutely the wrong strategy. It does not work. It will get you in big trouble, and your child is going to be mad at you for that. And I want to show you all. This here is this image that you're looking at on your screen. Some of y'all can't see it, but I'll describe it. It's literally the amount of money that your child has doing the $5 a day plan. Now, the $5 a day plan is free. It is at blackwealthmasterplan.com, blackwealthmasterplan.com. And this really just shows what happens when a parent is conscious enough to invest for their children. Or a grandparent maybe sets up a trust that does these investments for their kids. This is $5 a day. $5 a day. You can't even buy a Popeye's chicken value meal for $5 a day. So don't, when people tell me black people can't afford to invest, I just ask them another ridiculous question. I say, well, can black people afford chicken? And I know what the answer is. That's me asking a rhetorical question because the answer is yes. So if you can afford chicken, you can afford to do this. So literally after about 10 years, you see here the number is about $29,000, give or take a few thousand. This is $5 a day or $150 a month put into the S&P 500, and you can literally randomly pick your stocks. You don't even have to stock pick or anything. You can literally randomly pick your stocks, or you can put it all in a mutual fund like VOO, Victor Oscar Oscar, a Vanguard fund, or SPY, Sierra Papa Yankee, which tracks the S&P 500. So after 10 years, your child's 10, they got about $29,000 liquid. This right there, the first 10 years, puts them in a space that about 90% of all black people are not. Give me a yes or no. Would you say that most black people, most working class people have $29,000 liquid they can draw on in case of emergency? Would you say that most people, period, white, black, or otherwise, have $29,000 liquid? Like liquid. I'm not talking about in home equity or whatever. I'm talking about liquid. Like I got $29,000 in the bank right now. I could draw on and pull that out tomorrow. Do yes or no? Yes or no? I got to double check the data, but I think the answer is no. So literally, in after 1 decade of not even it's not even sacrifice. It's $5 a day. It's like the amount of money we spend on fast food easily. We probably spend more than that if you think about it. Your child's already in a place where they're much safer than they would have been otherwise. After 20 years, the number grows to about 102,000. So they're 20 years old. They got approximately 102,000, give or take a few thousand, and maybe 90, and maybe 110. Nobody can predict the future, but they're good. They're in such great shape at this stage. And then at the age of 30, you're approaching $250,000. By the age of 40, you're talking about $750,000. Now, remember though, the $5 a day plan was designed to be a bare minimum. That was for people that are on welfare. That was for people that are making minimum wage. Most of y'all are not making minimum wage. Most of you are not on welfare. Most of you are not in the bottom of the financial basement. I see how much money some of you are making in the Prime program. Some of you sold $5,000 worth of stock options on Monday. So $5 a day for you really shouldn't be $5 a day for you. It should really be more like $20 a day. So what that $20 a day would be, $20 a day times 30 would be $600 a month. Some of you have car notes that are going to be about $600 a month. Well, that makes these numbers all multiply by four. Right. So instead of 29,000 after 10 years, you're going up to over 100,000, about 125, 130,000. Instead of 100,000 after 20 years, you go to 400,000. Instead of $250,000 after 30 years, you're talking about close to 1 million. So your child's a millionaire at the age of 30. Thank you, mama. Thank you, daddy. Thank you for loving me enough to thank you for loving me as much as you love your car. Thank you for investing in me as much as you invested in the Mercedes we were driving or whatever. Thank you for loving me as much as you love the landlord, right? After 40 years, this $750,000 becomes about 3 million bucks. Generational wealth presented right before your eyes. That is easy, so easy that a 5-year-old could do it. If you give me a 5-year-old who simply does what I tell them to do, they could do this plan. They could do this. The only challenge is that 5-year-olds would have a hard time coming up with $5 a day. But any kid with a job could do this. Anybody can do this. All you got to do is buy the assets and don't sell them. That's it. Buy the assets and don't sell them. And so if you want to see the plan in action, or you want to get that, share this with your family, go to blackwealthmasterplan.com. It's totally free. It's for the community. This is one thing that we want to really share. Some of you have seen it before, and I hope it's okay that I reiterate it. Like, so sometimes I'll repeat it and lay it out there again, because repetition is how you learn new things. Repetition is how we internalize new ideas. Repetition is how we shift the culture. Repetition is how we shift our subconscious mind. So that's why I repeat myself with this, because I really want you to consider this, because this is easy. The solution to our financial problem is not complicated. I support things like reparations to the end of the earth. I really believe, white folks stole all our money. They need to give it back. I'm not voting for any politician that does not support reparations. That's my personal choice. So I'm 100% in favor of reparations, but I personally believe that this would be more impactful than reparations. I really do, because it's not just something that you are able to do on your own, but it also is a reflection of high level, high vibrational culture and high frequency discipline. It's a high level way of thinking about your economics. And if you think in your economics in a high level, then you're going to have high level outcomes. It's not just about the $1 million that your child's going to have by the time they're 40. It's really about the mindset of somebody whose family was able to think far enough into the future to give them $1 million by the age of 40, right? That a family that has that mindset, you could take the money out, you could take their money away. Do you understand? Like, you could literally seize that whole million, but that family's still going to be good. Why? Well, because they've got something that money can't buy. They've got a high vibrational, high level of economic consciousness and awareness. They understand how money works. They understand how to go get more. When you understand how money works and you lose money, you're not so worried, because you know how to go back and get it. Do you understand? So that consciousness piece has to be, I think that should be consistent with the economic piece. But if you give the economics and you give the consciousness and the understanding of basic financial concepts, that child is going to be better off than most white people. It's not that hard to do. Okay. So anyway, those are my thoughts for today. I hope this conversation was beneficial to you. Also, just a reminder, I am going to be at the Get Money Fest on May 18th. I want to keep mentioning that in case you're near Philadelphia or you want to join us. Jay Ortiz is the host, and there's a link. I'm putting a link in the chat. It's getmoneyfest.com. That's the website. And then also, if you want to receive notifications when we meet in the morning, just text the word morning to 87948. Text morning to 87948. And also, we have some other stuff at drboycebooks.com. It's summertime, and I mentioned to you guys that this is a great time to get your kids started with our financial flashcards. We have a bundle pack that has fun financial flashcards that cover financial concepts, the basics of money. We have flashcards on credit, how to understand credit, entrepreneurship, real estate, etc. So if you want to take a look at that, our team worked really hard to put this together as a great learning tool for you and your kids. And the regular price is $159 for the bundle. They dropped it to $119. So if you go to drboycebooks.com, you can take a look at our financial flashcards. They're really, really a great tool. And I think that with summertime coming, you gotta find something for those kids to do. Let's not waste the time. Let's get them something that's gonna make them better by the time the summer's over. So here's the link directly if you want to go take a look at the flashcards. I'll put that link in the chat. And so I'm gonna get on out of here, guys. I hope you guys have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow morning as usual at 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you want me to send you the wake up call, just text the word morning to 87948.